Hey, I am here to discuss whether or not it is safe as a female to travel in India. And I'm going to practice looking at the actual camera this time. So, the first point that I have to say, and at the end of the video, I'll kind of also explain some reasoning as to why that is, cultural reasons for why the safety concerns exist, that is. So, getting around, I would recommend, all public transportation is great and it's safe. It's a little uncomfortable sometimes and unpleasant, but definitely safe. Always, just like anytime you travel, just keep an eye on your things when you sleep on top of your stuff, and always keep an eye on that every time you travel, including India. And be mindful of who's around you and your surroundings, and just always be a little bit aware and conscientious about that stuff. But yeah, public transportation is great, and I would not recommend biking just because it's very impractical, because in many places it's way too crowded and you will get hit by a car. And if you're in rural areas, that's great, but then you definitely have to make sure you have a bike that can handle the fact that the roads will be either non-existent or in very, very rusty conditions. Rusty, whatever. The next point is where to stay. And as much as I love couch surfing, I would have to say that in India I would not recommend it as for females, simply because there is a major misconceptions oftentimes with the males of that culture about Western women specifically. So if you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're feeling very uncomfortable and you have to be uncomfortably assertive, then honestly just steer away from couch surfing and Airbnb and things like that. But hostels can be great. Airbnb can sometimes be great, but hostels are usually separated by gender, or sometimes you can definitely find those ones, and that's really cool. And then there's little what are they called? Not motels, but hotels. You can find awesome little hotels in beautiful places for super cheap for us. Those are all really safe. Subways, lines, crowds, you're gonna find them everywhere in Asia, typically, especially in India, with one of the highest populations in the world. I think it already surpassed China. So in those situations, you may find that sometimes or occasionally a male will get a little too close because they'll take advantage of the fact that there's a major crowd around you, and they might press against something you didn't really want them to press against, or they might try to sneakily grab something. Doesn't happen all the time. It didn't even happen often to me, but it can happen. Just be aware of that. Be aware of who you're around and be very assertive. Usually if that happens, if you're very firm and assertive, they will be so ashamed of themselves, because that is just not, that's definitely frowned upon in their society, because of their culture around respecting women and just relationships in general, which I'll get to. Anyways, if you are loud and if you're very assertive, they will stop and they will be embarrassed and ashamed of themselves. So just be mindful in large crowds. Of course, pickpocketing always, in every country and every culture. In bars and in social situations, just be assertive again. There are times where that misconception is pretty obvious, how the men in their culture view women is different. So they may be a little too close to you, a little too persistent, and you really just have to be assertive and stick up for yourself. They may not get it, and you may have to say it again and again and again. I don't want to dance with you anymore. I'm done dancing with you. Go away. And I hate being rude, but you have to be rude if they're not getting it. You just have to be assertive, because they may not understand that you actually no means no, because of the misconceptions in their culture. So that is, just always be mindful in social situations. Honestly, in every country, try not to get too drunk when you're traveling, but you could totally do it, and I've done it a few times. Make sure you're with friends. Make sure people have your back on you. But yeah, just be mindful and have common sense. Another thing that can happen and will probably happen, unfortunately, is you will get followed, and that sucks, and it definitely happens. So don't be too scared when it does happen, but just be aware of your surroundings, and don't be afraid to tell them to leave you alone, and definitely do tell them to leave you alone, because it happens often, to be honest, and you just have to be assertive and say, I don't want you to follow me. Go away. I'm not interested in you. I'm not interested in anything that you're saying to me. And you just have to get rude, because the first couple times you say it nicely, don't immediately be rude, of course, because you can say it nice and they might get it. But if they're not getting it, you just have to be assertive and you might have to get rude. And unfortunately, it's a reality that you probably will get followed around a lot. So then the last point is, don't be too scared. That happened to me where I honestly was like overly cautious, and that can also be a negative as well, because you might end up being rude to somebody you definitely didn't want to be rude to just because your patience has gotten so low. Just be mindful of that, because that's one of my regrets, to be honest. And don't be too scared. Don't be so paranoid that you are so scared of going to like this really cool other place that the guy's offering you because you think he's lying to you. Just be a little bit open, but be cautious at the same time, always. And don't be too scared. Don't shut yourself out and shut yourself down to experiences and be extra rude just because of our society. And when you tell people that you're going to India, everybody freaks out and goes, oh my gosh, it's so dangerous there. Don't do that. Aren't you scared? And I'm here to tell you that it's amazing, and don't be scared, ladies. Go for it and do it alone. I did it, and it's amazing. Just be mindful, and don't be too scared, but be aware. What are the cause of the misconceptions for Western women, and why do men treat Western women the way they do in their culture and in India, in that country? So the culture there has definitely a different mindset about relationships, physical intimacy, and marriage and sex. In our culture, casual sex is very normal, and as well as like public displays of affection and open relationships, and in general, like dating culture is very different in our culture versus an Indian culture. And in their culture, for example, at one point a friend of mine, a female friend, had said to me about going to a male's house, an Indian male friend of ours, I can't go over there though because we're not dating. And that just completely gave me huge insight as to what their dating culture is like. And she was very young, like 23. And how their perceptions of male-female friendships or male-female dating is. And because of that, males are introduced to Western women through things like movies, TV shows, music videos, and pornography. A lot of pornography, or especially pornography. And so because Western women are portrayed on these sources of media as being very open, flirtatious, promiscuous, and just casual about dating, sex, and intimacy, that's how they view all Western women. Because in the world, Western pornography is the main style or type of pornography that's available, and it is definitely pushed on other countries. So they view Western women as always wanting to have sex, loving sex, open to casual sex, open to sex with anybody, loving intimacy, and basically just super horny, always wanting crazy sex people. So just be mindful of that, and know that that is probably the cause of it, and they may just need to be educated a little bit about Western women and our how we value ourselves, or how we view ourselves and things. And definitely take the opportunity to make them more aware of that if you get the chance. And don't be angry about it, because it's just misconception caused by the media, to be honest. And they don't mean any harm. They really are just misinformed and absorbing the wrong messages. So I think that pretty much sums it up. Yeah, men there don't have sex till marriage, so they have a misconception because of pornography and because of media, like movies, about us being promiscuous. And it's very safe to travel India despite all that. And you should definitely travel India and have fun and love it. Bye, have a good day.